Shalom and welcome to another podcast. Today we're talking about the imminent, the expected, the supposed to be here a few days ago, Iranian attack on Israel. But first, Shalom Yair, somewhere in the US.
Hey Mati, it's good to be here. How's the feeling over there in Israel? I mean, the Iranian attack, as we remember from April, was right behind you. Missiles flying over the Temple Mount, Iron Dome, and other defense system, intercepting these missiles together with aerial strikes, defending Israel from Arab countries, from our allies, the United States, Britain, France. What's the feeling down from Israel, from Jerusalem?
Look, it's been a serious week here in Israel. I jokingly say, but it's not really a joke. Saturday or a couple days back on the weekend, we were expecting, it's happening any day now. I went on my early Saturday morning bike ride, and I was almost expecting, looking up to see the first intercepts over our head. But it's been tense. The Iranians, so to frame the conversation, it's been a back and forth of exchange of blows. Iran attacked in Israel, Hezbollah attacked in Israel, and Israel recently eliminated a head of Hezbollah and a head of Hamas inside of Tehran, inside the capital of Iran. And the Iranians have sworn publicly to retaliate strongly and to sort of exact a price on Israel. And then slowly, as days progress, they're sort of backpedaling away from that. We will respond strongly, but it will not bring regional war. We will respond strongly, but maybe, So we're still waiting. We don't know where.
Iran promised to conduct a heavier strike against Israel than what they did in April. So in April, they launched 250 ballistic missiles, drones, and other missiles, cruise missiles into Israel. So they promised to do something more. So what can that be? My interpretation of the situation is that it will be a multi-front attack against Israel from Hezbollah, from the Houthis in Yemen, from Iraqi militias in Iraq and Syria as well, and from Iran itself. And together it will be very hard for the Israeli defense system to intercept all these massive attacks. But Israel said, we will not just retaliate after you strike us, we will attack immediately after we see one missile that is launched at us. And this time, we will attack severely. We will strike military installations, oil refineries, port cities in Iran that will completely shatter the economy of the Islamic Republic of Iran. And I think that this is a major reason that the Iranians are still considering if they should respond or how they should respond. Because this attack that Israel will carry out, if Iran will attack us, will basically destroy completely the Iranian economy. And this is the topic of today's podcast. We're going to talk about the economic ramification of a war between Iran and Israel. So let's dive into this.
First of all, good use of the word. Good use of the word ramifications, Yair. Well placed.
I practiced a lot of time.
Today's word is. Anyway, so you're correct, and again, to frame the conversation for everyone, it's not just Israel and the Iranians, because the tension in the Middle East has been this up and down wave for going on 10 months at this point. Going back to, we're in August, we're going back to October, going back to 10 full months of this, and it goes up and down, and sometimes it's limited to the boundaries of Israel and maybe a little outside of that, in a little in the Red Sea, a little here, a little there. Now it ballooned out of the borders of this country, where almost overnight it went from Israel talking and exchanging blows with Hezbollah and the Iranians to suddenly the Americans are now sending again their fleets to support Israel. Where suddenly the current President Biden, Vice President, they're doing the press releases and the late night discussions. How do we align with Israel? Commander of CENTCOM, Central Command for the American Army, shows up the next day in Israel, does the press party with Israeli Chief of Staff, Herzi Halevi. So it was like this big sort of inflation of and ballooning of the level and the size of this event, where now it's regional. And we're not just Israel fighting the Iranians. We're back at this discussion of what happens if we go from limited warfare, which is where we're at right now, a little, and I say this jokingly, but it is limited, a little piracy in the Red Sea, a little rockets by the Houthis, a little UAVs, a little terrorist attacks, but nothing that's full-on war. Where
by little, it's like 10 missiles a day, 10 missiles a day, every day since October 7 on the border with Lebanon and Israel. And missiles ongoing on a weekly basis from the Gaza Strip towards Israel, and also I would say on a weekly basis from the Houthis in Yemen towards Israel. But still, this is limited.
Daily, even Yair. Daily. Think you open the headlines every morning. It's become normal to us. Oh, look! Last night, American, whatever type of ship it is in the Red Sea, intercepted 2 cruise missiles from, it doesn't matter where it was launched from the Iranians. So it's become the new normal.
Sadly, this is the new normal, and that's why people don't talk about it. And only now, when there is this huge Iranian threat of an attack against Israel, then Israel and the conflict goes back into the news. And just by talking to networks here in the United States, it's like, so what's the situation? How is Israel preparing for these attacks? And I keep telling them, listen, this is our normal routine. We are living under rockets attack since October 7th, and some places even before that. Yeah. So, Israel is ready, and we will respond whenever this attack becomes severe or not. But this is our day-to-day lives, and we are at war. So it depends on more attacks, more news statements, and what is buzzing. Then it can turn into like an all-out war or just a smaller conflict. Only 6 fronts against us, not 7. This is what we feel.
Yeah, but there is that threshold that hasn't been crossed yet. And the threshold is, and this sounds bizarre to have this discussion, but it's a real discussion, where unofficially, if you read between the lines of the press releases by Hezbollah and the Iranians, there's a sort of delicate balance where Israel will take out people somewhere in Lebanon or somewhere in Syria, but we're not bombing their entire base. It's surgical.
Correct.
And they'll say, well, we're attacking military targets or semi-military targets most of the time. So maybe it's a unit, a civilian unit, but it's armed within a community. But we're not bombing infrastructure. And that little, what seems like a little step of, we're just going to do this, that's the difference between limited conflict and full-on war. And and now we're sort of diving into like the economics or the mechanics of it. It doesn't take much to take a country from being a first world country to being a country that goes back, not to the Stone Age per se, but where you really scale back on a lot of what makes a country's economy and society work. And that's what we're looking at right now. That's that's the next kind of conflict.
Guys, this war is ongoing every second and changes, and there are new developments. So on our social media platforms of TBN Israel, you can find up-to-date reports and situation assessments on what is happening in Israel in this war against Iran, Hezbollah, Hamas, the Houthis, Iraqi militias, and all the enemies that want to threaten the peace of Jerusalem and of Israel. So please search us at TBN Israel online and subscribe to us on YouTube and on any other platform. Yeah. Okay, if the war against Hezbollah, which from the first day of this war, basically on October 8th, was like, they punch us, we punch them. They punch us stronger, and then we responded the same amount or maybe a little bit more. So the level of intensity keeps going up more and more. So they attacked civilians. Now we target military leaders in the heart of Lebanon, not just on the border with Israel. Yeah. So this is how it's escalating, and it can get, worse very fast. And the threat that Israel is putting on the table, in response to Iran's threats is, okay, you launch missiles at us. This time we will not destroy a military facility or an aerial defense system in Iran. We will destroy port cities. We will destroy oil refineries. We will cripple the Iranian economy and send you back decades ago. And I think this is a good connection to talk about the ramification of the economic situation in this war and how it affects Iran, Israel. What's the Iranian economy looking like? Because I think people don't know. If they're rich, they're not rich, they have oil. So what's the situation with Iran, Mati? Maybe you can explain a little bit about what does Iran have now in the bank?
I think those are good questions. Let's dive into our cheat sheet over here. All the information we researched before the podcast. If anyone's only listening to this, Yair and I, we don't come up with this stuff on the fly. We take time, and we have a team of very smart people that help us pull all this information together. And when it's wrong, it's us. But when we get it get it right, it's because someone else gave us the information. So here's some interesting stuff. In absolute numbers, the Iranian economy is smaller than the Israeli economy. And yet their population is almost 10 times larger as a country.
Yeah, yes.
It's about 9.5 times larger as a country, depending on how you count our population. They're about $400 billion in GDP, gross domestic product, and Israel was over 20% more. But when you calculate that on GDP per capita, which is a commonly used metric in economics of how much money does every individual in the country generate for the economy, Israel is much, much, much higher, it's an indicator of the efficiency or the efficacy of the Israeli economy versus the Iranian economy. The Iranian economy is heavily dependent on oil exports. It doesn't have a strong tech industry. It doesn't have high tech in the sense of being able to manufacture chips or vehicles or anything like that. They do a lot of reverse engineering, similar to the Chinese 30 years ago, maybe. They do a lot of like lower level developments, and they rely a lot on money from oil. Also, very important to note on the Iranian economy. The Iranian economy is the result of a fundamentalist Muslim regime, and it's been that for over 40 years. And those people have pushed them back. They pushed the women back into the homes and out of the academy, and they've taken away a lot of the jobs that they used to have as an economy. Iran, back in the 60s, was an emerging economy, more than Israel was at the time, by the way. We were a strongly emerging economy with a population that was well educated, was nimble and moving quickly. Israel, since that split, they've taken the route of fundamental Islam. Israel's been running full sprint since the 90s as far as economic growth goes. And one more thing
this is something that we see all the time, Mati. Sorry to interrupt, but this is like one thing that we see all the time. Like in the Gaza Strip, we see these terrorist organizations that all they care about is destruction, destroying Israel, advancing this evil ideology and spreading it to Europe, to the United States. And just as an example, the Gaza Strip, instead of flourishing and being a hub for economic prosperity, is poor and only depending on humanitarian aid to survive on a day-to-day basis. And the only way Palestinians can find jobs in Gaza is to be diggers of tunnels in Hamas, to be rocket launchers, or work at a rocket manufacturing company, or be a teacher that teaching the next generation how to hate and destroy Israel. So this is what's happening all over the world. Hatred and evil corrupts, destroys the economy, destroys the future of the individual population, and only brings prosperity to the leadership. So the leaders of Iran are living very well.
They live
leaders
very well.
of the Gaza Strip, those that still alive, they used to live well in hotels everywhere. But that's the situation.
I love that last touch. Those are still alive, and you make a very very good point. The point being is that it takes a very complex system to see an economy succeed, and countries. Look, you can only get so far on natural resources, and the Iranians have a lot of it. Israel barely has any, especially up till recently. You can only get so far on natural resources. You can only get so far on controlling routes of trade, like the Egyptians and the Suez Canal, like the Iranians and the Straits of Hormuz. You can only get so far without having a rich and pluralistic society and freedom to your people to sort of explore economic growth. And Israel is reaping the benefits of that versus the Iranians. And the premise for this conversation in this podcast was, well, what is going to happen if we, so to speak, take off the gloves, metaphorically speaking, and say, like, let's unleash everything we have. And the Iranians have threatened, and we know they can, to cripple the Israeli economy. They've threatened to, use the enormous arsenal that they've deposited in the hands of Hezbollah to strategically bomb the port of Haifa, where there's the refineries and ships, and Ashdod port, and to a lesser degree the Eilat port. So to stop international trade via the sea into the state of Israel, and to bomb highways and to bomb city centers and stuff like that. And what's interesting is this threat oftentimes it's sort of like, it's not said in the sense of like we're going to ruin your economy, it's we're going to hurt you. That's usually the way it's framed. Gallant, our Minister of Defense, just a couple days ago, he goes out and openly addresses this threat. And he says, and he's speaking both to the Israelis and the Iranians, hey guys, you're threatening us and saying, your retaliation is going to be much stronger than what we expected. In a sense, be afraid, live in fear. And it says, I just want to remind you that whatever you think you're able to do to us, we have more than you have on the asset side of things. Our Air Force is stronger, which it is. Our ballistic missiles are more substantial than yours, which they are. Our allies, the Americans and others, are much more substantial than yours. We have submarine capabilities. We have, according to foreign sources, nuclear capabilities. And he says, at the drop of a hat, when you say we're attacking you, we're not staying out of that game. We're not just going to sit here waiting to see what damage you do.
We'll attack you back. Yeah, definitely. And I think that this is a change in the scenario, because so far Israel only responded. And this time it's like, okay, we're not just going to respond at the same level that you attack us. This time we're we're attacking you a lot more strongly than what you attack us. Okay, so you strike, I don't know, civilian infrastructure in Israel, we'll attack your high-ranking leaders in the heart of Tehran. We'll attack your port cities, your dams, and creating a water problem for your entire population. We'll attack all refineries, and then you will have no economic prospects and growth options for your people. Which, by the way, the Iranian people are suffering like seriously. They have no money. Yeah. The new Iranian president, the reason that he's elected and his platform is to improve the economic situation of the people of Iran. Okay, so that's a major issue. But still,
what's his name? The new president, what's his name?
Now you tricked me. Al-Khattian, something like that.
His name. I say this because people around the world, they always wonder, how did they get that name? We spent about 5 minutes before the recording started checking how you actually, I think it's pronounced Masoud Pezeshkian is the new Iranian president. The previous
I'm sure that he will say it differently. Yeah.
Masoud Pezeshkian. I'm going to try to remember that. It's a mouthful.
It's not easy to say the Persian names for sure, but also the Turkish names. Anyway, the language is difficult. But what I want to say, So with all of these economic troubles, Mati, Iran is investing in Hezbollah. How much? We have the number. Hezbollah receives
about $1 billion a year.
$million every year, or up to $1 billion every year from a country that the people are suffering. Hamas receives $100 million every year from Iran. The Islamic Jihad, which is another terrorist organization that operates in Judea and Samaria in the West Bank in Israel, also with the sole goal of creating attacks and terror attacks against Israelis, receives about $30 to $50 million annually. And the Houthis in Yemen receive also $100 to $200 million annually. And all this money is used to carry out attacks against Israel, against the United States and its bases in this region, while the entire population of Iran do not have food to eat, do not have access to normal day-to-day goods for life that we're used to. So these are the enemies that we're dealing with. It seems like it's the same in Hezbollah, in Gaza, in Lebanon, in the Houthis, and Iran. They don't care about their own people. They only care about destroying us and our allies.
I think it's a little more complex than that, Yair, because the people of Iran are smart people. They're spirited people. They have an incredible heritage to their people. And, a leadership always has a discussion with their people. What are we doing and what's the cost of it? So in Israel and most liberal countries, it is, you let us govern, and we're going to bring prosperity to this country. We'll keep you safe, we'll keep the economy growing, stuff like that. But in some of these countries, Iran is not an exception in that. Other countries do the same. They're saying, here's the deal. We're promoting this agenda. And the agenda is we're going to spread our version of Islam and our version of end-time, Muslim theology throughout the world. And it's going to cost, but we're going to be successful in spreading this ideology. And I don't think they're shy about sharing that with their population. You'll see them talk about it. Yeah. We're soldiers in the battle. We're soldiers in this holy war. And they discuss it. They sacrifice their lives. They sacrifice their economies. And as long as it's working to a certain degree, I think the population understands that there's a bigger picture. Not everyone agrees with it, obviously, but people at least understand it. But it comes to a point where how much can you cripple an economy before the people say, this is too much? And here's something interesting about all the numbers you're putting out there, which they all have the word US dollar at the end of it. The Iranians are spending, and I think this is a very interesting side trail to sort of follow for a second. The most international trade is done in the dollar system. And what the Americans did post-World War II is interesting, and if you're into economics and how that affects world history, and I am, it's fascinating to see. America wasn't always the obvious choice as sort of the governor of all world finances, and still to this day, even if you are Iran, who burns the flag of America, your cash reserves are held in US dollar.
Dollars,
And even if you're someone at war with America, your cash reserves are in US dollar. And what America did, and this is going back to the 2010s, America has put a long series with an international coalition of sanctions on the Iranians. And they froze their assets and they kicked them out of the SWIFT system, which is the international banking transfer system.
To cripple their development of the nuclear program, basically.
And it hurt them. It hurt them much more than people can imagine. It set them back, and again, it's hard to get exact numbers, but they say that between the 2010s, let's say to around 2015, 2016, within a 4-year span, give or take, about almost 20% of the GDP of the Iranians was erased. So let's say Iran is a country that has 5% annual growth, which is not especially high for a country with such a young population, what you would call an emerging economy. 20% is 4 years, but it's compounded growth, so it's even more than that. It's more than 4 years of financial growth erased by sanctions. That hurts. That hurts a country.
Yeah, definitely. Imagine that you invested your money in stocks or in economy or something, and 20% of it goes down, while you're used to being happy about 3% increase a year. So this is kind of the situation.
So it hurts. It hurts them. And that's where their friends, the Russians and the Chinese, enter this picture. And if we really zoom out, we talked about the fact that people, even the enemies of the U.S., Russia, the enemy of NATO, that NATO was formed to fight against, the former USSR. They've always been trying to push an alternative currency or some kind of trading system that's outside of the U.S.-controlled one. The Chinese have done the same thing. They're trying to create some kind of economy or alliance of economies, because in today's world, you can't be one country. Even a country like China can't stand alone economically. It's reliant on trade and resources moving between countries and the ability to export. So the Chinese, and I didn't know this before we were researching for the show, the Chinese have a financial, and I'm saying this so people know that this is how you find information. The Chinese have an alliance called... You have to research, The Chinese have an alliance. It's called the BRICS Alliance. And they formed basically an alliance with everyone who's not a friend of the Americans. African countries, some Asian countries, the Russians, the Iranians, other people that love terrorism. Yeah, North
Korea. Nice countries you want to visit, right, Matti?
You said it. Anyway, So it's all these countries. And what are they trying to do? To create a pact that can create a virtuous cycle outside of the effect of the Americans. And if you ask the question, with all these sanctions, it's over 10 years of sanctions at this point, how do the Iranians pay their bills at this point? And the answer is China. China buys their oil. China buys their oil, and they do a huge amount of things that are illegal in international law and maritime law and different things. They change flags on ships and they move money, whatever. They do a bunch of things to to funnel cash into Iran. Iran sells them their crude oil at a discount price to keep their economy moving. And also, and we've both talked about this in the news of this last week, the Russians and the Iranians have this really bizarre relationship now.
Yeah, definitely. It's now everything changed. It used to be that Russia was basically selling military equipment and technologies to Iran, but now because of the Russia-Ukraine war, Iran became a supplier and a new industry for developing drones and other military capabilities and weapons and supply it to Russia. So kind of the thing began to change because Russia did not expect the Ukraine war to go on for so long. So they started developing factories of weapons within Iran to develop these, military needs to keep on and going in this war against Ukraine. So that kind of places Iran on a level of a military kind of supplier and not just somebody who gets and buys weapons and uses them. So this is a new dynamic that we see here in the region and in this coalition of the West versus the East. So it's I think it's very interesting, and it might also develop the more the sanctions grow and the more the economic pressure on Iran will grow. Iran will find other alternatives to make money. And there is no vacuum in the Middle East. So if like the United States and dollars or Western money leaves Iran, someone else will fill the vacuum. And that can be China, North Korea, Russia, other nice guys.
Yeah. And all of that is relevant until the point where Israel and its allies decide that they're going on the offensive against Iran.
Yeah.
And on that moment, that very second that happens, everything changes. There's been, if you follow, and I don't really do this enough, if you follow American politics, there's been a lot of public sort of, I don't want to say accusations, discussion between the heads of the American forces in this part of the world and Central Command or, Pentagon. And part of what they're saying is look, let us on the offensive, because and people might not know this outside of the Middle East. America has a lot of assets in off the coast of Iran or in the oceans around it. They have the ability to completely stop all Houthi attacks. They have the ability to prevent any Iranian vessel from leaving port. That ability does exist without Israel being involved at all. And they're not doing that. What they're doing is they're playing defense. When the Houthis attack, we respond. When the Iranians launch cruise missiles or UAVs or whatever it is, we shoot them down. But when you flip that on its head, and instead of playing defensive, Israel now says, well, now we're at war. And what does that mean? That means that every Iranian military vessel that we see on the high seas is getting a torpedo from an Israeli submarine that day. No more ships.
Yeah.
And and what it means is we're now bombing your ports, and we're bombing your electrical grid, and we're bombing your supply ships, and everything is on the table now for grabs. Everything changes at that moment, and this war and like whatever they were trying to do, the economies grind to a halt, and now it's a battle of who can fight it out, who can duke it out hard enough and long enough to bring the other country to its knees. That's literally what's going to happen.
And that's not the question even. I mean, if you talk about a comparison between the economic capabilities of Israel and the economic capabilities of Iran to withstand such an attack, Israel has the advantage for sure, because we have assets that are not just physical on the ground, extracting oil, producing weapons in factories. We have assets that are intellectual. We have assets that are technological. We have companies not in Israel that are Israeli companies. So the ability to withstand and for the population and the economy to survive such a war like this is very strong on the Israeli side. And as we said, so the Iranians understand the big picture, some of them understand the big picture of why they are fighting, because it's a goal for the next life, because it's a spiritual battle, because it's spreading the Shia Islam in the world. But once it comes to the point that you don't have food on the table, on the plate, and you don't have water to drink and to give your kids, I mean, everything else is irrelevant. All you can think about is, where can I find food? Where can I drink water? All the big picture ideologies fade away. And Iran is very close, I mean, to that point. Once a war starts with Israel, a full-on scale war against Israel, and the population will not be able to support the regime in that case for very long.
Yeah, I think a big piece of that is the American support that Israel has. And without that level of support, you know, your toll on the civilian life in this country would be much, much higher. And I'd say this, and I say this to anyone who's watching this in America: it doesn't matter what the identity or what your thoughts are on the president that's sitting in the White House now or post the elections. The support the U.S. has given Israel in this war has been unparalleled and unbelievable in a positive way. I don't think there's a day that goes by where America isn't putting the lives of Americans and assets of the American army, and when I say army, I mean all branches of the army. Both, I know, because I know from
Navy, Air Force,
Marines, and Army. American Armed Forces. In Israel, we just have the Army, and it has different branches.
Exactly.
I know. Someone corrected me last week. I was like, wait a minute, so I'll say this
right. Yeah, you know, they have airplanes in the Navy. You know, it's like, it doesn't make sense to us. But like, so definitely, no, I can tell it, you know, personally, in fighting in the Gaza Strip. I mean, Israel is dependent on receiving missiles,
munitions,
tank shells, bullets, replacement parts for our planes, for our tanks, for everything basically, on our allies, America, Germany, Britain, and other allies in the West. So now you cannot fight this war alone, and because of the support, we are able to withstand for so long. But it goes both ways. I mean, as we said, if Israel will not be here, the war will be way closer to America, to Europe. So that's the interest here on both sides. Nobody's doing anyone favors. So it's also important to say.
There's another element, I think, here on a psychological level of the group of people, which is, you know, we talked earlier about what is the price you pay for waging war. And the Iranian people have paid, and this needs to be said, they've paid an economic price, they've paid a social price, they've paid a price in human lives and the quality of their life for decades now in Iran. With Israel, they haven't seen war on their doorstep. They did see that with the Iraqis. They've seen that in other cases. But they haven't seen war on their doorstep. And when this war ends, and it will end ultimately, and it all goes away, what are you left with? The Iranians are left with an economy that before this war had, according to unofficial numbers, about 25% unemployment. And that's not abnormal for countries such as Iran. The Turkish people have similar numbers. Many other countries where there's a large young population and their leadership hasn't had the forethought to actually build a viable economy long term, the young population doesn't have work. There are no jobs for 20 to 35-year-olds in the economy. So there's a big chunk of those people sitting at home, and when one day the war ends, and there's no reason to blame Israeli planes, Israeli spies, Israeli Mossad, Israeli, who know what are they left with? They're left with an economy that's in shambles, that has paid the price for poor leadership for generations at this point. And what do they have to show for it? And Israel, the Israeli economy is left with a very different state. The wartime economy, it keeps things running in this country. And we're going to take a hit, and there's no question about it. But even prior to this war, unemployment with Israel was marginal to non-existent. It was so small that it was sort of at the level of what you call in economics full employment. Everyone who wants to work has a job. A growing, viable, strong economy. And we're going to come out of this, running and kicking out of this war. If it's done anything, it's emboldened and given people energy and focus in this country, And for the Iranian people, for the people of Lebanon, for the people of Syria, look at the quality of life that they've sacrificed for this hatred and for this war. And it can get worse. It's not like it's hit rock bottom yet. They're going to pay a very substantial price. When the war ends, however it ends, they're left with that. With the price of poor leadership, with the price of the hatred and what that's brought on their people for generations. And it's a very bleak image to look at when you think about it.
Yeah, definitely. I think so. So basically, I think what we're saying here to Iran and to everybody who's trying to wage a war against us in this situation is beware, because the implications will be very, very severe and will last for many, many generations to come. And the war against Israel is just not worth it for you, Iran. So, and I think that the leadership of Iran understood that. Maybe it's also because there's a new president involved and he wants to address the economic situation in the country and reassessing all the elements, because, I mean, they promised an attack within 72 hours, and I think that time has passed already.
A lot longer, yeah.
Right, Mati? No attack yet behind you as we are recording this podcast?
No, looks like we're good.
Good to know, and Israel continues. People go to work. It's very important to say. Summer camps are still underway. People are preparing for the new school year in September. Life goes on. The people of Israel can still advance, plan for the future while being under attack, and these threats do not shut down the country as they used to before. I mean,
and one more thing. Yeah. Sorry, I cut you off.
No, it's okay. So it's sad to say that we are getting used to any situation, but I think that's part of I don't know, God's creation of humans, that we can adapt to everything and be positive in any situation. And for us here in Israel, we can even be optimistic and happy that due to the fact that we're under attack from multiple fronts for so long, just now in the past year, and we are still succeeding. School is ongoing. People are thinking about, their future, try to advance in their career, in their jobs. There is a future plan. There is hope. It just shows that faith is high. People are optimistic, and God is on our side, because if we're surviving, that means that we're on the side of the good guy, the big guy above, and He's guarding us. So, I mean, that's kind of like an optimistic point in all this situation about wars, economic stuff. If we're still here, means there's a reason, and that God is watching over us, because it doesn't make any other sense otherwise.
Yair, I can always trust on you to be the optimist in the room. 100% of the time. I mean, I agree with you, and I think that desire for progress, for growth, for happiness, it's universal. There are no people around the world who don't want that, and you can see that even in like the recent elections in Iran that were earlier than expected due to the unfortunate accident of the previous leader of the country.
Unfortunate helicopter accident. On the helicopter, helicopter, Israeli Mossad agent, allegedly. Just kidding. This is a joke, that joke, sorry guys. Yeah.
Yeah, it's ongoing puns that have to do with these things. But the recent president pronounced Masoud Pezeshkian, hopefully.
Nice, you're getting better at this name.
I'm still reading. I still have to read the name every time. So President Pezeshkian, he's running on the ticket of, as much as you could run on the ticket in Iran under the Ayatollahs, he's running on the ticket of financial reforms and financial prosperity for the country. And again, this guy didn't come out of like the woodwork. He was propped up by the religious leadership to say, hey guys, because people are complaining and people are concerned and people are pushing for it. He brought this guy forward, President Pezeshkian, to say, look, we're at least we're going through the motions of pretending to improve the economy. And they're only doing that because people were complaining. They're only doing that because there was an internal pressure to get things moving forward in a positive way economically, or at least to show some kind of hope. To sow hope and to show hope for the people.
Yeah. So how do we summarize today's show, basically? I mean, Iran, don't attack us, because you'll pay very, very heavy prices for it. I mean, I think that's basically the message that Israel is sending Iran.
Yeah, I mean, again, we're fighting a war between nations and a war between economies, and it's even bigger than that. It's a war between axis of alliances. If Israel well, I should say it differently. When Israel is successful and prosperous, it's because of the relationships we had. We don't stand alone. It's our European trade partners. It's the Americans. It's the backing we have. It's the riches of the world, so to speak, that work in like this international trade network. And when the Iranians are successful or fail, it's not them alone. It's them together with the Russians and what the Russian economy is able to produce, and it's them together with the Chinese and what the Chinese economy is able to export and send around the world, and what relationships they're able to build. So it's bloc against bloc, just like it was in the Cold War again. But it's also Israel, a beacon of democracy and liberalism. And again, we're not perfect, and all that stuff. But still, we're the democracy in the Middle East. We're a country of many opinions, too many oftentimes, in this part of the world, but freedoms to people, to the citizens of this nation. All citizens of this nation, not just the Jews in this country. Versus the fruit of radical Shia Islam that has been ruling the people of Iran in a tyrannical rule for generations at this point. And what that brings out of their country. And the two of them, when we fight against each other, it's not just the military of that day, it's the economy, the education, the fortitude of the people, the stamina of the nation, all coming to bear one against the other. And I have no doubt we're going to come out of this on top. We're going to come out victorious. We're going to come out successful. We might be a bit bruised. We might be a bit scuffed up, but we're coming out on top. And you find hope, and I find hope in the pages of the Bible. We know how the story ends. Every time, always. There's never a doubt about it.
Yeah, definitely. History repeats itself from biblical times. It's like all these Israeli holidays, what they come up to. Okay, they tried to kill us. God intervened miraculously. We survived. Yalla, let's eat. So this is the situation, and it will happen again this time. And in the history books in the future, this war will be studied, and God will be praised for defending Israel. And what we can do now in order to help, Israel, because this is also a spiritual war. So we can pray. Okay, you can pray back at home. Pray for Israel. Pray for wisdom for the leadership of Israel, for the leadership of our allies, for the United States, Europe, and all the Arab countries that are supporting us against Iran here. Okay, and you should read the Bible, understand on which side God wants you to be. Okay, and what He wants you to do personally. Okay, and then do that step. If it's sharing, what is happening in Israel with a friend, a neighbor, or somebody, that also helps. Because people need to know the truth of what is happening, and then they can pray. Okay, so this is part of how you can personally help in this war that affects all of us, the whole world. This is not just an Israel-Iran war. America is involved, Europe is involved, Arab nations are involved, and all of the world's economy is affected by this war.
I want to end on 100%. I want to end on a note of gratitude. You and I, Yair, are sitting here because of the very faithful and supportive audience of this channel. And I want to just say thank you to everyone at home who's shared and subscribed to this content. And we're looking at the numbers coming in and all the people that have donated for what's happening in Israel. Thank you from the bottom of my heart, on behalf of Yair and our team. It is a blessing. It touches us. It makes us feel the love, feel the care, feel the warmth coming from around the world to what's happening in this country. And it means a lot emotionally. It means a lot spiritually. It means a lot relationally to us. Keep it coming. It's been hugely, hugely encouraging to know how much support we get. And I'd say if you're one of the viewers of this channel that isn't yet subscribed and doesn't share this content on a regular basis, now's the time to start doing that. There are an odd number of people that watch this channel on a regular basis that haven't yet subscribed. So now's the day to press that subscribe button, make sure the notification bell is on, and make sure you don't miss this content again.
Yeah, definitely. Anyway. Well, Mati, this was a pleasure. Hopefully I'll be able to sit with you in the studio again. So far, all the flights back into Israel were canceled. But, I'm optimistic. So hopefully next week I'll be back home and we can have this podcast in person. But if not, I'm only 20-hour flight away from you. so
good seeing you, Yair.
Thanks, Mati Shoshani, the second and only.
Thank you, Yair, the first and only.
Thanks so much. And thank you, guys. Please keep praying for the peace of Israel, the peace of Jerusalem. And thanks for watching us.
Hello, this is Mati here in Jerusalem with TBN Israel.
This is Yair Pinto from TBN Israel here in Jerusalem. TBN Israel is keeping viewers informed with Israel-focused news, culture, and what God is doing in this land.
Support TBN Israel today on